All right. Hello and welcome to the Align Life podcast. Hope you're doing amazing today. So, in this episode, we are going to be talking about having a choice. What are you choosing? And the remembering or realization that even if it's hard, you still always do have a choice, and what that can look like in your life practically. So, I was thinking about this in terms of parenting, which I feel like is a lot of times where things come up for me and where I feel like I really have to dig deep into personal growth practices or like tools, and how remembering that it's a choice to feel good and to be responsible for how you feel instead of allowing circumstances to determine how you feel, and like letting go of that responsibility um, of feeling good. One of the things that I often say, you've probably heard me say it on podcast episodes before, is that a lot of times we could feel a lot better than we do on a day to day basis if we really learned to master our minds at a higher level and to be in control of our thinking more, and to like learn to let things go, learn to like give things back to people that belong to them, like to not have to take on something that's not yours, in terms of, you know if someone else is upset about something, like just to let that be something that they deal with and not something that you need to take on, and to remember that you don't have to be offended or bothered by things, which is a really big one, I think, especially for women, because we can, I think, suffer silently a lot. We tend to ruminate on things and think about things a lot in our own head and then go over it over and over again. Whereas I think men can be a lot better at just being more present focused and saying something if they need to say something and then just move on. And for women, I think lots of times we maybe don't say something where we would like to say something because we don't want to look rude or come across um, like a bee, for lack of a better term. And just it ends up almost like eating us up inside because we're just thinking about it instead of just like either letting it go or dealing with it with someone else if that's what needs to be done. Um, so we have to, like, that was even something I was thinking about this morning, of just like reminding myself, yeah, you don't have to be offended by this, or this doesn't have to bother you. Or a big thing for me too is in texting, to just remember that what is said, and to not read into something, and um, to not make up a story in my head about what somebody's reply could mean or lack of a reply mean, and to just take things at face value. I remember a couple of years ago seeing something, like just one of those little quotes on Pinterest about like, it was like, I'm no longer responding to subtext, like, as in, if somebody says something and they maybe there was um a tone, or something that they maybe kind of made a jab or something like that, to just like let it go, because I'm no longer responding um to something that could mean something else. I'm just taking it at face value, which I think is very mature. Hard to do, but like it's a very just mature way that I think we all would like to live. And of course, then also prioritizing those types of relationships where um, where you can have honest conversations with people and you're not worried that there is subtext, um, because that is that's something else I've been thinking about is just how unsettling it can be to the nervous system and how much now I can't remember exactly what the statistic was, but it was something along the lines of like when you get angry, that it can take like 6 hours or something kind of absurd. At least I thought it was absurd. Like, I thought it was quite a long time for your body to come down from that, and that even if you think you've come down, like, your stress level or just, like, you might be a little bit dysregulated still, and it could be and again, I can't remember if it was 6 hours, but it was something quite startling to me that I really thought of I just thought a lot about that. Because I remember hearing that when I felt like excuse me, with my girls, like, it just felt, a lot of up and down with maybe, like, meltdowns or emotions or whatever, and I realized how much, that affected me emotionally and how dysregulated I can feel from something that happened earlier in the day that I really had to work on, like, doing a lot of mind management to let things go and remember and just remind myself, like, it's okay to let that go, you don't have to hold on to that, because I used to really be that was actually how I would have described myself, was somebody who would hold on to a grudge for a long time, and, it's just, like, it goes back to that quote about, like, holding on to anger or resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, which I know that's a terrible quote, but, like, it's so true. It's so important to remember that we're the ones that feel our emotions. So when we are caught thinking things that just don't serve us, that, there's nothing we can do about it. It's like something that happened in the past or something that's going to happen in the future or that could happen in the future. And we just need to learn to, like, be present and to, like, let either way of those things go, because if it's upsetting us emotionally, like, the price is too high, right? I like to think of it like that. It's just like it's it's too it's just not something that I want to be interested in, and or that I want to entertain, because I'm more clear now on how I want my life to feel, because I feel like I was there for a while where I felt very dysregulated, from different things that were just out of my control in motherhood, for example, that I felt like lots of my days when the girls were young and home all the time was lots of ups and downs with them. And that's kind of the whole point of this episode, is just remembering that, like, feeling good is a choice, and we have to make that choice, and sometimes in a day we have to make it like every 30 minutes, because the day could just be really challenging, or sometimes it can feel really easy and it's like we don't even think we have to make a choice because the day is just flowing so well. But we have to remember that feeling good is a choice, and it really comes from taking responsibility for what you're thinking, what you're choosing not to think, what you're choosing to let go of, and what's really in your power. And I was listening to a lot of Wayne Dyer over on the weekend, and I've shared this quote with you from him before too, but I'll say it again in this episode. Of that, he said that this quote, whether it was him, that's um, the one who made it up, or whether he heard it, but it was like, if you are worrying about something, but you can't control it, then there's no sense in worrying about it because you can't control it anyways. And if you're worrying about something, but you can control it or the outcome or whatever, then again, there's no sense in worrying about it because you can control like this yourself or the outcome. So there's no point in worrying. And so he said ultimately there's no point in worrying about anything because you either can control it or you can't control it. And so much of it is that you can't control it. And so then there's no need to worry about it. And this is just a lot of responsibility on our mind, on our thoughts to remember this because um, I think our brains are not like naturally wired or we don't learn this growing up and how much we need to manage our minds and how much we need to question our thinking. Like it's a moment to moment thing. And I know that we just like we just have to constantly remind ourselves like is this serving me to think this? Is this serving me to be upset about this? Do I is this even mine to hold? Do I need to stay here? Do I need to even be bothered by this? And it just takes so much strength, like inner strength and responsibility, and a lot of a lot of commitment to feeling good to live like this. But we're the ones that benefit, like we're the ones that feel our emotions, like I already said. So it's like we benefit from it, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. And that's one of the things that I wanted to really talk about is like feeling good is our birthright, but that doesn't mean that it's easy to even feel good. And it's funny how a lot of times we can, blame other people. Like we're maybe a parent and our kids are fighting or mad about something or whatever. And then we just like take that on. And I've shared this with you guys as well, but I often will remind myself like their negative emotion is not a personal attack. And so like if you hear whining or like if they're frustrated and they're making like frustrated noises or whatever, like it can be so triggering and maybe it's just more so me or if it's like maybe a mom thing because I sometimes don't know that it affects maybe my husband as much as it can affect me, but I almost feel like I have this responsibility in like making them feel good. And I have to constantly remind myself, like, they're entitled to feel how they feel. And like, that's okay. And it's not like I don't have to fix anything, even. Like, lots of times kids don't want you to even fix anything. They just want to tell you how they feel. And same thing for women. Like, um, I think that's one thing that men and women have a hard time with in relationships is like if a woman is like venting or talking about something that she might have to remind her husband that I don't need you to fix this. I'm just telling you this because I need to kind of like get it off my chest, but there's nothing that you need to fix because that can be a lot of times how men think of like, I need to fix this for you when that's not what a woman is necessarily coming to or talking to her husband about these things is that she's just saying like this was frustrating or this was hard or this is how I'm feeling just to like get it out. And so same thing with our kids is that they might just want to tell you something because they just need to like get it out, but you don't necessarily have to like you could even ask them like do you need me to help you solve this or do you want to talk about it because um a lot of times for them, right, just talking about it can help them feel better and just having someone listen will be helpful. So we have to remind ourselves like their negative emotion is not a personal attack on me or whatever because yeah, for me a lot of it is just being a mom and then having 3 kids and feeling like I've that's one thing my default might be to like feel overwhelmed by their emotions at times, feeling like it's my responsibility to fix it for them. So this is what I would call like a thought error, right? And I was talking about this on Instagram this morning, I think it was. I like lose track of posts, but like these thought errors that we have, which I would just describe or like say the definition of a thought error is just what's a thought that you're thinking that's not necessarily true, right? And so much of what we think isn't necessarily truth. It's like our opinion. So this is what I mean, and like on almost like a moment to moment basis, we need to kind of come back and remind ourselves like this is like my opinion and it could be causing me to feel some sort of negative emotion, fill in the blanket negative emotion, but this isn't necessarily the truth. So maybe how I'm feeling isn't necessarily the truth. I think that's what I was talking about on my post this morning, was because I was talking about motivation and how we can't rely on motivation to create an aligned life or create a life that we love. We have to be able to act beyond how we feel, because like even yesterday I went for like a long run yesterday. Um and I said to my husband in the morning, I was like, "Oh, I don't even feel like going." And for me, running is aligned. So I'm not saying that if you don't like running, I'm not saying that you should run if you don't feel like running. Okay. I'm saying for me, I do love running. It is aligned to me. And let's say I have a goal for a certain distance. So I'm running because there's a plan in mind, right? So then I have to be able to know how to take action towards something, whether I feel like it or not, because I know the result that I'm after. Um, and that's really what we're talking about here, is like I felt I felt good once I got going. And that's so how motivation is that I started to feel motivated by like mile, let's say 4. But we have to know ourselves enough to know like what it is that can be motivating to us. So like for me, it's a good playlist. Lots of times it can be the weather too, which is a hard thing. Like when it's cloudy or rainy or like minus 20 outside, like no, I don't feel like running necessarily. But once I get going, you warm up or whatever, you have a good playlist and you can start to feel more motivated to do it. Um, but you have to know that it's okay if you don't feel motivated in the beginning, that you can still do something. So this remembering of responsibility is on you, and and that we can't be blaming other people for why we did something or why we can't do something. We can't be blaming the situation for why we feel a certain way. We really have to come back to this radical responsibility, as I like to think of it. And it's not blaming ourselves. It's not feeling like we have to come up with an explanation about it. It's not shaming ourselves. It's not any of that. Like, it's okay to feel bad if you feel bad, and it's okay to fail or not reach your goal or not do something that you said you were going to do. All of it is okay. It's all neutral in the grand scheme of things. But just coming back to like taking ownership of it, that like if I'm feeling a certain way, just to like take responsibility that this is how I'm feeling, and to try not to like put that on someone else. Like, you made me feel this way, or I'm feeling this way because of this. Like, to just remind yourself, or if you're needing to talk to other people, just to like to take real ownership of how you feel, um, including feeling bad. Nothing wrong with it. It's part of the human experience. But there's a quote. I think it was like an Oprah Winfrey quote, or maybe she said it on one of her shows or something like that, but it was like, take responsibility for the energy you bring into this room. And you know what? I don't think it was her quote, but I think that she shared it. So I don't know who to give credit to. But anyways, that really stuck with me, even even if I'm not living it all the time. Um, to just take responsibility for the energy you bring into this room, because it's like it's so wild how energy um, can like leak on to other people. And just being a mom, oh my gosh, I see it so much all the time of like if you're driving in a car and somebody's upset, and then the other two kids, like, they might start to get upset because it's almost like the energy of the one that's upset is like the strongest, and it's just like getting on to everyone, right? Like, so so like, yes, take responsibility for how you feel, but also know, like, sometimes it is hard when, like, maybe you're dealing with someone else's negative emotions or whatever, like, it can impact you, but we do have to, especially as moms, we have to be like the strongest because our energy so much can influence the energy of our household. And I've seen that so many times in positive ways or negative ways, that if I can, be really rooted in how I feel, that it can, um, obviously have like that positive impact on my kids. And it could be like just making light of things if there was something that was annoying or frustrating, and just like laughing about it or like moving on. Or if there was something that was frustrating and I just like don't if I just like get annoyed or frustrated by it, a lot of times then I can see that like impacting them and their energy. So that's always been, a really big, really hard thing, because sometimes we feel very entitled to feeling bad or frustrated or whatever. But we have to remember that the power that we have as moms, especially, to how that can impact our family. Um, and not just our energy, but like literally our whole belief system. Um, I like I notice about, like, if I'm complaining about something, like, just even if I was saying something, about maybe my husband working shift work or not being home at nights, and saying that it's hard or whatever, like, then I might see one of my daughters like pick that up and say something that it being hard too, or like being upset by him not being home at night. And it's just like such a big reminder. And I noticed that a lot too in the winter time. I was complaining about the cold, and then they would, and it was just like such a big reminder for me about how my belief system becomes their belief system. And it's funny because, like, of course I know this. I like learned about this when I was doing my hypnosis training, about how from ages like 0 to 7 up to like 14, but really up to like 20, our subconscious mind is being shaped and formed by those core relationships growing up. So, of course, like our parents, our siblings, coaches, teachers, those influential people, things that they say, how they interact with the world and other people, what they believe, like what their belief systems really do just become our belief systems. And so we have to remember that like what we're if we're not taking responsibility, we're going to just end up, in a sense, raising children like that too. So, like, I don't say this to like freak anyone out, but just this really big reminder that personal growth is so important as a mom, and that it will, everyone benefits from the growth that you do as a mom or as a wife, because you learn to be more in control of yourself and interact in a more positive way. And then your kids pick up on that. In even just, another thing Wayne Dyer will often say is like, you have to make the choice. Like, do you live in a kind universe or do you not? Because whatever you believe is like what you're going to perceive. And that's a really big thing about for that teaching our children, going, I didn't mean to make this so much about like parenting, excuse me, but it's just, as I'm talking about things, it just makes me think about so much about parenting. But we have to be mindful of how we want our kids to think about the world. And I really want my girls to think that it's a kind universe, and that people are kind and people are good, and that they're like, in a sense, I almost want to like program them to believe that they're like lucky and that good things happen to them, and that just the power of their mind, affirmations, all of these things. Like I really want to teach that to them at a young age because I just think that it's just a whole nother life, whole nother way, just a way better way to live, to know those types of things now instead of having to learn them when you're like, for me, I was 26 when I learned that it was my thoughts that created my feelings. And I was just like blown away that I didn't know that earlier. Um, because now it's something I just have to remind myself so often, like, oh yeah, it's my thoughts that create my feelings. Um, and how much responsibility that takes to like own that. So I had like um, a whole outline for today's episode, and I feel like I've really just went on a little bit of a ramble, but I think that I've covered a lot of what I wanted to say. One of the things I was going to talk about was like this illusion of no choice and people thinking. And so as I'm saying this, I just never want anyone to feel like um like I'm being insensitive, or that I know that there can be really difficult circumstances that people might find themselves in. So I don't ever want to come off as insensitive, but I'm hoping that this can be like empowering for you to hear it instead of feeling like I'm, yeah, like coming across insensitively. But just this illusion of no choice, or thinking like you don't have a choice, like just or feeling like you're stuck or anything like that, like things are out of your control or you can't help it. To just for a lot of situations or circumstances that I'm talking about, to remember that um, even if it's a hard choice, you still do have a choice, and just if there is a choice, so reminding yourself in that situation, like, okay, yes, I do have a choice and I'm choosing this right now, but I maybe won't choose this forever. Okay. And I can't even think of an example of that, but just like those are things that I've said to myself of like, I do have a choice and I'm choosing this, even though it's hard or it's something that I don't necessarily like. But this just helps me come back to my own sense of power. Um, and again, like a lot of that could have been around like my husband's shift work, because that was something that I really did struggle with for a while, and just reminding myself, I have a choice. This is a choice that I'm, like, even though it's hard and it's hard for me and all that kind of stuff, like just coming back to not feeling like a victim, because that's not a good place to be in, is that victimhood. And I'm not talking about, like, I'm talking about feeling like a victim. I'm not talking about anything else, if that makes sense. But when you feel like you just don't have any power, that's never a good place to be in. So just remembering, like, no, I have choice. I'm choosing this for now, and maybe it won't be forever, but this is what I'm choosing for now. So it helps you feel like you have authority in your life, because you do. Um, and remembering that not choosing is still choosing something. So, like, make sure if that's what's happening that you pause and you say, "No, I'm choosing this." Like, sometimes maybe even if it's like to do with a job, like, "Oh, I don't know what I should do, so I guess I'll do nothing." Well, nobody can do nothing. You're doing something. You're always doing something. You always have a choice, right? So just to come back to this sense of responsibility and ownership of your life, and saying to yourself, you know what? I don't know what to do yet. So I'm going to choose this. I'm choosing this job, for example, and I'm going to choose this until another choice becomes really clear for me. Might be what you decide to do. And remember that everybody's situation is unique, and um, I always like to think of it from this perspective of like, whatever you're doing is exactly what you need to do, and is what is exactly right for you. And I also like to even say there's no, like, you never do make a wrong choice. In Kabbalah, they talk about that as like, you have free will, but you also have like a destiny. And that might seem really like it might seem like those two things can't coexist, but they actually do. Like you, in any moment, you have a choice, and then once you make the choice, it was like that was exactly what was supposed to happen. So it's this mindset, it's this way of believing about life and about you in your sense of choice that like everything that's happening is for you, it's for your growth, it's how it's supposed to be, so that you don't waste time thinking, I should have done that. What if this would have happened? Like, I made the wrong choice, or I've wasted my life because, um, you know, if there was a breakup, or if you chose you decided to go back to school for something else later on in life, or you're like, oh, I should have done this. I made the wrong choice. I wasted all of this time. You never waste time because energy can't be wasted. Is this teaching that I love? So everything, there's always been a lesson and growth in that journey. So nothing's ever been wasted because energy can't be wasted, right? Like that's a law of physics or whatever. And so remembering that, um, just going back to my list of trying to stay on track here, that choosing whenever there's this choice of between two things, oftentimes the thing that's the hard thing is often the right thing, because the growth is is always uncomfortable and hard no matter what. And so that's something to consider when you're ever at a crossroads with something and you feel like you need to make a choice. It's almost like choose, if you think you don't know, maybe consider choosing the thing that feels harder. Because, and I mean, this is just like very general. You have to check in with your own sense of alignment for what's right for you. But I really do feel like the thing that's going to be harder, that's going to require you to grow more, is probably going to be the most beneficial thing. Because, again, another core belief that I have about life is that the purpose of life is growth. I can't remember if I said this on a podcast episode yet, but like me and the girls were taking the dog for a walk, and it was like, yeah, I think I did share this, but I'm going to share it again. So we're taking the dog for a walk, and in the sidewalk, it was like the sidewalk and then the ledge, and then of course like the road. So it's like concrete and like just a bunch of concrete, right? And there's this weed that's growing out. And I like made a point to pause the walk and say to the girls, I was like, girls, look at this. And they're like, kind of like, what? It's just like something growing. But I was like, this is proof that the purpose of life is growth, because like this weed, it's like its nature is to just grow. And how did it like find its way? First of all, like, how did it even like a seed get down there or whatever? And like it grew from like this um concrete on concrete, and it came out. And I'm like, this is really how I like to think about the world, is that the purpose of life is growth. And you see it in nature. And of course, we are part of nature. So it's just remembering that um, growth is uncomfortable, but the purpose of life is growth. So we do need to get more familiar with being uncomfortable and doing the thing that's going to require us to stretch ourselves. Um, because that's the most long lasting sense of fulfillment, is when we earn it. I was thinking about this too, because I'm going to be doing like a 30-day joy challenge in the daily practice membership site, and about how much of this sense of happiness or fulfillment that we're all after is really, it comes from doing hard things and from like earning it. Like lasting happiness or lasting fulfillment is usually the things that we like had to put in a lot of effort. And my thing that I'll just always go back to is in running. And like running, like for example, the full marathon that I did on May 25th was like, there was 20 weeks of training that I did, plus however much training that I was doing before the official marathon training started. Like I still was in a base building period. And then just like, 20 weeks, well, that works out to like 5 runs a week. And then it was like some cross training in there. And then there's fueling and sleep and just all of these things that went into it. But like how much joy and that sense of fulfillment that like I will always have with me. Like I can always turn back and think about um that memory or that like event and feel this sense of pride because of like how like disciplined and committed and how much effort I put into that. So I just want you to think about that in your own life is like where are you putting in that effort because that's going to you're going to get out of that like a deep sense of fulfillment or happiness or joy or whatever. So coming back to the theme of this podcast episode is that there is always a choice and it's something to consider to choose the hard thing because of what you'll get out of it. And I have a podcast episode that's probably quite a ways back about like the something along the lines of like um, convenience, why convenience can be dangerous. And just thinking about like, convenience stores and like how there's just like chips and gum and chocolate and everything like lined up at the till, the cash registers, and how like tempting that is for adults, let alone kids that stand there and like are waiting for their gas or whatever, right? And how it's easy, it's convenient, it's something that's right there that you could like easily just grab, but how much if you just continue to do that, like how much that can create havoc in your health and in your life, right? And in like in many ways. And then our phones, they can be so convenient to just grab and like quickly look up something. But like how distracted we can then be because we have our phones all the time. And so that, for us, we never really get bored. And especially for kids, they're never, if they have phones, they're never really getting bored. But how boredom can be where good ideas come from. Like even for me, if like this is where this podcast episode came from was just like being with my own thoughts, right? But if we're constantly like listening to something or not letting our mind wander, then we really lose that. And so we have to give ourselves space for that. So we have to remember that convenience or like instant gratification is a dangerous thing. And I feel like I'm tapping into all these different podcast episodes that I've done in the past, but like choosing um even even like I guess yeah, to come back to that, like choosing hard is so important. Like I'll go back to running for an example. Like I think there's something to say about like choosing to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation because I think that it's a really good thing for you to like overcome that. Um because there's always going to be life, like I even was saying in my Instagram post this morning, like life is always 50-50. It's always going to be 50% positive and 50% negative. And that's just exactly how it's supposed to be. And how do we know? Because that's how it is, right? That's literally how life is. So we have to have some acceptance that that's how it's just supposed to be. So if we can put ourselves intentionally in difficult situations, it really does build um, us up to know how we can handle it and like to teach ourselves that we can handle it and to like also work through it and to prove to ourselves that maybe we're stronger than we maybe thought we were or whatever. But I really think that there's a lot of value in that. So choosing can be hard, but we should often choose the thing that is the hardest in a way, check your own alignment, but because of what we'll get out of it and who we become. And that's something that I think about goal setting, for example, is like it doesn't matter what goal you set. It doesn't matter if you reach the goal this time or if it takes you 10 times to reach it. The point of a goal really is about who you become in the process of going after the goal, because that's the purpose of it, right? Coming back to the purpose of life is growth. So, who are you becoming in each of those times you set a new goal? Um, okay, I've talked about responsibility. Um, I think that's really everything that I did want to talk with you about. I just encourage you, I guess, to take a moment and think about what you have been choosing lately. And just remembering that you always do have a choice, even if it feels like I don't have a choice because if I don't do that, then this will happen. Coming back to the remembering that, okay, well then you're choosing to do that because you don't want that to happen, right? Because a lot of people will be like, well, I don't have a choice, I have to pay taxes or whatever. It's like, you don't have to. If you don't, then you might eventually go to jail or whatever. You might eventually have to pay a huge amount of sum, but like you're choosing to pay taxes because you don't want X outcome to happen, right? So it's like, think about that in terms of like your health. Like, are you choosing to eat a whole food diet? Or are you choosing to eat processed foods on a daily basis? And and remembering like you have a choice, and what is that choice going to compound into? Um, And same thing with your exercise, and same thing with relationships, and same thing with your growth, and same thing with your career, and same thing with how you take care of your home, and all of those types of things. You always have a choice. So what are you choosing, and are you going to be happy with how that compounds over time in your life? And then I would also encourage you to take a moment and think about where you maybe do need to make a choice, but you haven't been making a choice, and what you've been choosing by default. And maybe you might say to yourself, I'm not ready to make a choice. So then remembering, okay, I'm choosing this, and I will come back and revisit this. And maybe in time you might choose something else. But coming back to that responsibility, that ownership over yourself and of your life, of that, this is what I am choosing. Okay. And maybe there's something that you are ready to make a new choice on. I wouldn't overwhelm yourself with a bunch of different areas of your life. I would really just narrow in on one area of something that you maybe realized after listening to this that you're ready to make a new choice on. So that's what I have for you guys today. And just really the theme of the daily practice membership is this reminder of practicing daily, practicing whatever, right? Like practicing yoga, practicing mindfulness, practicing maybe meditation, or practicing might be a new goal like that you have for yourself of just like who you're being, right? But coming back to remembering that a daily practice of something is so much more powerful than, so that might be, a 20-minute practice of whatever, journaling, yoga, food prep, whatever, fill in the blank. But that daily practice is way more powerful, of 20 minutes compared to 2 times a week of, even if it was like 1 hour or 2 hours, right? Just what you do consistently is so powerful, because that is something that creates a habit, and over time, like we've been talking about, it compounds. So that's the whole idea of the membership, of practicing who you want to become, practicing that on a daily basis, and remembering that the small things become the big things over time. And that's how everything always gets created, is just small, almost sometimes like um not glamorous by any means, not glamorous. I was thinking about that too in relationship to like my marathon training of like just, alarm clock would go off at like 5 or 5:30 in the morning. Just roll out of bed, put on the shorts, or sometimes be rolling out of bed, putting on like not even changing and just doing yoga in my pajamas. Like nothing glamorous about it, but the just the simple, small things that you do daily, that they really do create a big change in your life over time. And that's I think a good way to live and a good reminder for you, because it's like we can handle, let's say, 20 minutes, right? That seems doable. But thinking about doing maybe something for like hours, it's like that seems like more of a stretch, right? Um, and then I want to remind you, or let you know, I should say, that there's going to be, if you want to do some journaling on on this topic, there'll be a PDF in the show notes that you can download to do your own journaling on. So I'll have some questions for you to reflect on, related to this topic in the show notes. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope it got you thinking about your life, and I will chat with you next week. Take care.